Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I've got a fantastic guest for the audience today, Dave Fivecoat. He's got previous military experience and he's now an entrepreneur. He's founded a business company organization helping entrepreneurs grow. He does business consulting and he's here to talk to us about grit and how to develop it, what it is, and how to use it in your business. So I'm really happy and excited to welcome Dave to the show. So Dave, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on. Really have enjoyed listening to your show over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I love having you on the show, and I think the audience would really um, get inspired by your story. So tell your backdrop, your experience, and how it led you to do what you're doing today.
Yeah. I went to college at West Point, the United States Military Academy, and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. I served in the Army for 24 years. I retired as a colonel, and along the way, I did tours to Afghanistan, three tours to Iraq, a tour in Kosovo, and a tour in Bosnia. After I retired in 17, I worked for another company for a couple of years, and then at the beginning of COVID, I decided that I should found my own company, uh, the Fivecoat Consulting Group. I've been on the journey as an entrepreneur for the past 4, almost 5 years now, and along the way, I've been able to help people and organizations through business consulting, executive coaching, and a little bit of leadership talks and workshops. Yeah, so that's sort of the short backstory.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And really, I think some of the best entrepreneurs I've had on the show are actually they have military background. One was like a Navy SEAL. West Point is one of the top military academies. And so talk about grit in this context of entrepreneurship, because you talk about six components of grit. Define what is grit, how is it different than resiliency, and how can I use it?
Yeah, actually, like many of us that made it through COVID, my big COVID project was actually writing the book on grit. And I thought it was sort of appropriate at that point in time as we were all struggling to get through this. It was an uncertain end. We didn't know where it was going or how it was going to turn out. I had been talking to a client that I thought wanted some business consulting, and she said, "Hey, you're kind of gritty. Why don't you write a book on grit?" And that sort of served as the inspiration. The light went off, and I was like, "Huh, well, maybe she's got something there." And so I sat down to to put some thoughts together and test drove it with some different audiences, and eventually, after about 9, 10 months, published the book Grow Your Grit. It's still available on Amazon. Just came out with an audiobook because I didn't originally do an audiobook because I wasn't sure if it was going to sell. And so I was like, well, I won't pay the extra money to do the audiobook, but it's gone great and had a lot of folks ask for an audiobook. So just released the audiobook about 2 months ago. That's the sort of the grit story, but grit as I define it is the perseverance to accomplish your long-term goals. The godfather of grit out there is Angela Duckworth from the University of Pennsylvania, who did some really groundbreaking studies in grit. Uh, I consider it a little bit different than she does. She says that you have to have both passion and perseverance. I think passion is important, and it really helps to fuel your grit. But a lot of us do things day in, day out that would be considered gritty that we're not particularly passionate about. I'm sure your audience, does a lot of billing, and that's a particularly gritty task that requires a lot of perseverance to accomplish. But folks uh, aren't really filled with passion on billing or some of the other sort of mundane, sort of gritty things that we have to do to make our businesses work.
Yeah, I really love this idea. And one kind of you talk about the six components and purpose, goal, perseverance, resilience, courage, and motivation. And what I've really been fascinated with military training is the ability to really stay calm in the face of, bullets flying at you, people dying around you, and to execute and make smart decisions. So where does grit play into all of that?
Yeah, so the one that I like to talk about a lot is the courage aspect of it, and I think that's something that your audience will resonate with as well. And I'm not just talking about sort of the courage that we're talking about there, like in the face of battle that I had to show in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I was also a paratrooper over the 24 years. I did 102 parachute jumps during my career. And it was fascinating to look back on it and see how the Army dealt with that fear and adrenaline that everybody has whenever they jump out of a plane, whether it's jump number one or jump number 102. And the Army deals with that fear by having a series of rituals that prepare you. You first have to rehearse what you're going to do throughout the whole sequence, and then you get in a mock aircraft and you rehearse what you do in the aircraft. And then when you get on the aircraft, you do a series of sort of things that's a group exercise to sort of help you overcome your fears. The jump master will say 10 minutes, and everybody in the aircraft will echo 10 minutes. And that whole ritual helps us get ready to overcome that fear of actually jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. But that doesn't work a whole lot as a small business entrepreneur or a medium-sized business entrepreneur. Uh, that doesn't really work. And the fear that we see in those kind of aspects isn't the same sort of thing. For me, at least, it typically revolves around procrastination, where it's something that I'm not particularly eager to sort of tackle. It's a tough conversation, a tough email to write. I find myself procrastinating it. And some of that is, fear or fear of failure. I probably wouldn't have written the book. I had this idea for years. Hey, I want to write a book, but my fears kind of held me back. And well, what if it isn't successful? What if nobody wants to buy it? And that fear is one of those important things that you've got to understand if you're trying to build a gritty business or trying to be a gritty entrepreneur. And one of the ways uh, that I have found most helpful for folks in the business world to think about it is reframing that fear. Rather than being success or failure, to reframe it in success or learning opportunity. And that, hey, if I don't succeed at this, hey, that's okay. It was a learning opportunity and I learned. And that was one of the ways that I approach the book. Another great tool for folks to take away from this is this idea of setting some boundaries with it. And when I decided to start my own company, there was a lot of fear there because I was like, what if it's a failure? What if I lose money? How am I to deal with it? And one of the best tools that I use with myself, and I continue to talk to my clients about, is this idea of saying, okay, let's set a boundary on it. So you understand, going into this decision. And for me, when I stood up the company, I said, hey, I'm going to do this for a year. And if I get to the year mark and it hasn't made money and it isn't going well, I will close down. At that point in time, I had a website and a couple other things. I'll close down the website and I will start sending resumes out and try to find a quote unquote normal job. So for me, those two tools, that idea of reframing it into success and also learning opportunity, or setting some boundaries on it when you have a big decision like starting a company or whatever, and say, hey, I'm going to assess it in a year, are incredible tools to help overcome that fear that we all have.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talked about because a lot of the audience is, especially the medical professionals listening, we have a innate or kind of socially conditioned fear of failure, and that can be a significant barrier to achieving our goals. And what I love is how you talk about reframing and kind of reframing it as a learning experience, and failure is not final. So, based on your experience in combat and as a coach, what advice do you have for someone struggling to overcome this fear of failure in pursuit of their gritty goals?
Yeah. So I have a lot of clients that are dealing with the struggle to sort of accomplish their goals, and there are things that are holding them back. I think one of the great things about having an executive coach is just somebody to talk to about it and ask you questions and provide some accountability to help move you forward. The reframing exercise is an incredible tool, and then also this idea of setting some boundaries and saying, hey, I'm going to take this risk for a year, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay, and sort of understand what you have potential that you can lose at that point in time. But the executive coaching clients, the power of executive coaching is having that person that asks you those good questions, gets you to wrestle with that problem and come up with your own solution and how to solve it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I
that
love
has
that.
been incredibly rewarding for me as an executive coach.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I really learned, I didn't, your idea of setting boundaries and just kind of setting time frames and leaving it at that, just leaving it on the table. If it doesn't work out, then you just move on. Um, Next question is cultivating grit in organizations. And, to today's organizations, you've got extensive experience with Fortune 500 executives, military. What strategies do you recommend for leaders looking to build a gritty organization and team that's resilient, focused on long-term goals?
Yeah, the thing that I find the most powerful with helping build gritty organizations is bringing the group together and coming to a consensus on what our values are. And it's not sort of the standard values. You sort of have to get beyond what I would call the table stakes values. I've worked with companies on creating their value statements and looking at their top five values and say, well, we're gonna have integrity. Like for the most part, almost every company is going to operate with integrity. And so that is probably not a thing that defines your company different than your competitors. And so we say, okay, that's great. That probably is a value, but it's probably not one that sets you apart and makes you guys different and special. And a lot of folks will say, well, we're going to work harder than everybody. Well, do you think, your competitor, Acme, whomever, is not working hard? And so let's get down to the real core values. And once you've established those five core values that really capture the essence of your organization and what makes your organization special, then spending time on building your organization's purpose. What's the why? And that takes a lot of work. There's a lot of intellectual energy that has to go into this idea of figuring out your why. So folks are able to use that why to deal with problems as they occur. One of the great examples of a corporate why is Apple. And Apple doesn't necessarily have this clearly defined, but if anyone asked what Apple's purpose would be, I would challenge and say, hey, it is challenging the status quo. And their idea is, hey, if you look back 15 years and first the iPod, where you could have 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was the first thing. Then the iPhone, and then you get the tablet or the iPad, and now right now challenging the status quo is the new Vision thing that they just rolled out. And they continually are looking for ways to challenge the status quo. Think about things that you never thought you needed, and bring that to market. And so I think that is a great example of a purpose statement that develops and enables a gritty organization to succeed.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I really love that. It's like, every organization that survives or is gonna have working hard, integrity, and then, the ones that really differentiate for you gave the example Apple and Amazon and all these really very valuable companies, they do something differently and they hire A plus, they got culture, they got good leadership, and they're constantly innovating. Final closing question is lessons from the battle room to the boardroom. So you successfully transitioned, and now kind of share specific themes or technique that you found particularly effective in civilian settings, especially in today's challenging times.
Yeah, one of the techniques that I think has incredible utility in both the military and the corporate environment is this idea of what's called the leader's intent. And the leader's intent is a one page document that captures your team's purpose, some key tasks, and then an end state. And the end state is, what does success look like at some point in time in the future? And you need to define that with a metric. For a lot of companies, it would be revenue or profit, or maybe number of sales, or anything like that. For a hospital, it might be number of patients served, or something along that lines. But combining those three, so your team understands the why, what key things, the how or the what need to happen to help us move forward, and then what the end state, what your vision looks like, at a certain time in the future, and how you're going to measure that along the way, is an incredibly powerful tool for developing alignment in your team, and in the next level down, and then the next level down. It gets even more powerful when you get your leader's intent published, and then you ask your direct reports to put theirs together, and so you can see how it's nested and builds an alignment across the whole network of the organization. So that is one of those things that I think translates really well from the battlefield to the boardroom.
I love that leader's intent. I have to study that more and read more about it. How can people?
It's in chapter 13 of the book. So go get your copy of Grow Your Grit, and you can read about it and apply it to your organization.
Yeah, what a fantastic way to end it. And how can people contact you, find you on social media, and check out your book?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I also have my own webpage, the Fivecoat Consulting Group. I do a blog once a week, and so folks can read about leadership ideas and techniques that they can apply to their organization.
Yeah, and for all the audience out there, be sure to give Dave's resources a check out, and like and follow him on social media. His book's on Amazon. Check that out, as well as Audible, and leave a 5-star review. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.